how did you set yourself apart, D West? I got my own notions. I believe it was that damn mid-range 17-foot footer. You had a lot of
Yeah.
bouncy people that you can. I remember the D West shit. You could play with your eyes and get you up out of your toes a little bit.
Right.
And you had the, you almost was big doggish where you can react within a fake and decide whether you're gonna shoot or not.
Shoot, right.
You know what I mean? I
Right,
know that
right.
about you from 15 and 17. You face up, you know what I mean?
Right.
You looking at feet and you can react within your face whether you're going to shoot. Was that your main weapon, the midi? The mid-range game is a lost art, whether it be through the point guard, the wings, or now the big man. We got the Rashid, we got the big man out here shooting threes now, D West. You seem to have eaten very well during your career off the mid-range game.
So I'll take you back. So the reason why I started shooting jump shots, I was not a jump shooter coming into
the
NBA.
elbow?
Never. I scored. Listen, bro. I scored over 2,000 points in college, and I would literally bet that 1,900 of them were within 8 feet. Like I was all at the rim, back to the basket. You know, I could beat you off the bounce, but everything was at the rim. And then my second year, I got hurt, and I got hurt because I wasn't listening. So I would listen to all of the vets. And Darryl Armstrong.
What did you get hurt? Was it the knee?
My second year.
Was it the knee?
So it was my knee. But I'll tell you, so Darryl Armstrong, my whole rookie year, said, David D. West, you got to shoot the ball. I wouldn't shoot it. You got to shoot that ball, young fella. The reason why I got hurt against the Pistons. And it was a play. Somebody dumped it off to me, and I should have shot the ball, right? And I heard Larry Brown behind me. And, you know, if you've ever played in a game with these older coaches, they coaching everybody. They coaching their team, coaching you. So I hear him as I go to drive and get fouled. I hear Coach Brown specifically say, you should have shot that ball, Wes. And in my mind, I go to the free throw like, man, he's another one. He's another one, man, telling me to shoot the ball. I don't shoot the ball. 2 possessions later, same type of play, and I go to the basket, and I get completely destroyed. Ben one side, Tayshaun another side, Rashid the other side. 55 games I missed. It was that play. And if I had shot the ball, I wouldn't have got hurt. So at the end of that season, Kenny Gaddison, who's the coach, one of my assistants, Kenny comes up to me and he says, David, you ever watch Karl Malone? And I'm not a Karl Malone fan at all. I go, nah. He said, well, if you want to have an NBA career, you need to watch Karl Malone. So Gat he literally handed me a stack of CDs of Karl Malone's best games from 95, 96, 96, 97. He handed like a stack this big of those games. And then he handed me the Western Conference semifinals, Western Conference finals, and the NBA finals against the Bulls. And he said, D. West, go watch these tapes. And Gat would check in throughout the summer. You watching them tapes? So I started watching. And I realized, like, man, Karl Malone, that's all he shot was 15 to 17-foot jumpers, man. But like we saw on TV, all we saw was the dunk, right? Was him dunking and running the lane. But the majority of his buckets were jumpers. And so that summer, I was like, okay, I'm going to just start catching and shooting. And I talked to CP because, you know, he played for Coach Prosser at Wake Forest. So we had, you know, we were communicating before, and we had met each other before he was drafted. But that summer we drafted him, I had already kind of reshaped how I was going to play. And it was before we knew he was even coming to the team. I had basically been given those instructions from Gat to like, yo, you got to be able to shoot this ball when you're open. And so, you know, my numbers almost doubled. I don't know what I averaged my third year, but it went way up literally because I was just willing to shoot the jumper. And it wasn't a whole lot of crazy work. It was just getting in the gym, making 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 shots.
See, that's the shit I remember when you was cracking and when the jumper went out. I was like, when did West start doing all this? And then I started hearing about the story. Well, he was shooting 800 jumpers a day for 4 months and all that. I was like, oh, well, that tends to happen when you put in that much work. Why do you think the mid range game has disappeared, D West? Because it seems to be at the biggest moments of the game. Playoffs, championship, you know what I mean? Big shots throughout NBA history, they tend to be the mid-range. Why do you think it's ignored why do you think it'll never go anywhere? And can you just speak to the importance of the mid range game and like specifically in like the postseason?
Yeah.
Did it pain you in your did it pain you in your heart when you start hearing coaches and talking heads saying, "Well, mid range is the worst shot in the game. You only shoot threes and layups."
Yeah, it's bad. And I would just say that part of it is, I think, there's a tendency to want to make things less complicated. And I think from a coaching standpoint, that's kind of the world that we're in now in basketball. Is these coaches just want it to be less complicated. So that's why you don't see a whole lot of defensive strategizing. Everybody just switches because the coaches just don't want to deal with whether or not this guy can figure out this coverage. Man, just switch it. And so it's like, we'll just draft guys that can switch everything, and to hell with defense. So that's why the scoring numbers are astronomical. But I also think that offensively, it's just an easier way to play, right? Because there are guys, just because you shoot threes doesn't mean you should be shooting threes. I watch games every night where there are guys who should not be shooting threes. And, there are guys shooting 25, 30% from the three, and they're still chucking them up because, the numbers say, like, that's the best shot and all this other stuff. But more importantly for me, I think it just takes away the different styles of basketball that can be played.
The different patterns, you're eliminating a couple of patterns that are
everybody
dope.
plays the same.
Yeah.
So I think part of the mid-range is like, it changes the way that the game is played. It's a legit, because you watch Kawhi Leonard still plays in the mid-range.
Durant.
You watching in the playoffs, right? In the playoffs, when things are on the line, guys are taking best available shot. They're not necessarily, Jokic. They're not necessarily hunting the three, which they do the majority of the regular season. It's also a copycat league, and once everybody, again, we talked about conformity earlier, right? I think a lot of these teams have just conformed. They've just given into the idea that, it's easier to just coach guys up and say, hey, run to the corner, shoot threes, come set a pick and roll. If you can't get to the rim, throw it out and you shoot the three. And so it makes the game a little less exciting, and it makes it a little less nuanced because, again, when you've got a team, so when I remember my time in Indiana, before everybody started just switching and playing the same way, there were different styles of play, right? We played a certain way. Memphis played a certain way. Dallas was playing a certain kind of way. The Warriors' way wasn't necessarily set because Mark Jackson was still there, but like the Spurs played their kind of way. And then, you had the Knicks who played a certain kind of way. Like there was different styles of play, right? Now it's all the same style of play, right? And that's what sort of changed the dynamic. That's why the mid-range game is not, you don't see it anymore. It's because it's a different style. Everybody plays the same style of play. I mean, guys get trapped, bro. Like they run. Guys are getting trapped in the half. They're playing zone.
Facts.
Like you couldn't play zone when I was in the NBA because you had a threat at the rim. You had guys who would shoot, but now guys are only going to shoot threes, so you can play zone. You can trap guys out front, and it's just a different style. It's just a different game, and they've done it in a way that's eliminated the nuance to the game and some of the variety that you could have in basketball.
Speaking of nuances, D West, let's get into it. Let's get a little technical for a power forward. I consider you were known to be, good, both offensively and defensively. What does a mid-range shot do to a good defender? If I'm a good defender, I'm bouncy. I'm long. You already know I'm bouncy. You know what I mean? I can pin it on the floor. I can move laterally. What does a good mid-range do from the four? You know what I mean? We can specifically talk as big man. We won't talk about for wing player. We'll just talk about for a big, for if you want to be good as a big and a good scorer, what does a good midi do for you offensively against a good bouncy defender that can switch off and do all these things that you're talking about?
Right. It keeps them honest. That's the first thing. It keeps them honest. It gives you a catch and shoot well within your range. So if you right off the elbow. So if I catch the ball off the elbow, if you don't close out to me hard, I'm letting it go.
Facts.
If you close out to me hard, I get my shoulder down. Now I'm one or two dribbles away from a rim attack. Also, the mid-range puts you in best. For me, it was always being a passer from that spot. So now I've got better angles to hit the corner, that I can play with my big who's under the basket, and I can also find guys on the perimeter, right? So now when you look at a game, that part of the floor is wide open.
Facts.
Like there's literally often nobody occupying those areas. So again, like I said, it makes teams easier to guard because you don't have those specific spots filled. Like you don't have anybody playing the elbow. You don't have anybody playing sort of that out. I guess a step. We call it the Malone post, which was remember that long trapezoid line that they would draw sometimes on the court. A step or two outside of that is a mid-range post catch. You can face up, shoot it. You know, a couple of dribbles. Even if a double comes, there's still enough room to move it. Yeah, it just changes the dynamics. But I think it makes you, especially if you're a guy who can knock that shot down, it just always makes you a threat to the defense.
Technical lesson, man. That Larry Brown's that Larry Brown story is crazy. It's like the old dude who maybe tells you something you don't want to hear, but deep down he knows he right. Yeah, that's crazy.
Right, and he was the opposing team coach.
Yeah,
but they used to be like that. Those like Don Nelson was that way too. Like he'd be coaching his team, but like if he saw you make a mistake, he'd be like, "Hey man, don't do that." You know,
they can't help it.
Yeah, they can't help it. Right.
Hey, what's dope? I want to real quick, Dylan, what's dope? I'm telling you, back then, D West is absolutely right. Even in the runs in the summer, like if you weren't comfortable with your little 15-footer and you pass it up, they'd be on you. They'd be like, "Hey, you got to shoot that." Because he going to the rim and he doing this, and we'll like for the science of the whole thing, you start to learn as a pro. There's just some shots you have to shoot that you have to get better at, that you have to learn to develop. But they will be on your ass, whether it's a coach or opposing coach, what it is, because like you said, them dudes be thinking about like injuries. No, they already crashed into the rim. He already going back this way. You just have to shoot it, son. You know what I mean? So just go back to go back to OGs and basketball savants.